Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Welcome,
Morning.
everybody. How you guys doing?
Hey, good. I
Doing
love that.
awesome.
Love that countdown.
Our disco
And
sign?
then it reset for a
Yeah.
second.
Is that the countdown
Like
remix?
countdown, psych.
Well, this is our inaugural webinar, so hopefully we won't have any kinks along the way, but we're flexible and we'll adapt as we go.
Love it.
We're all naturals at this, so.
Totally.
So what do you think? Should we give it a minute or should we get started?
I think we can get started.
All right, well, let's do this. So thanks everybody again for joining. Just to set the stage for the conversation this morning, we did some research and surprisingly, not surprisingly, we found that more than 50% of CRE teams are still relying on spreadsheets as their primary analytics tool. And, while they feel familiar, the reality is that they often limit decision making and long-term efficiency. So today, we wanted to dive into this a little bit and better understand and talk through the hidden cost of, dependence on spreadsheets, and how better data strategies can lead to better business outcomes. And then finally, try to address and identify some actionable steps to improve CRE data maturity. And I'm fortunate to be joined by my friends this morning, Chris Jurdy, advanced analytics and business intelligence expert, founder, CEO of Jurdy Analytics. Chris has worked extensively with companies like Nike, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, to name a few, to do some really amazing work from a data science and analytics perspective. Also fortunate to be joined by Nathan Settembrini, dashboard strategist and data visualization expert, founder of Allegro Analytics. Nathan's done really great work with Twitter back in the day where we worked together, Okta, and he's working with a prominent AI research company today, helping advance analytics programs. And then I'm Jeff Gagnon. I'm the workplace technology lead at Allegro. Um, and my script says to call myself a data analytics expert, but something along those lines.
You are, Jeff. Come
Um,
on.
feels weird to say that about
Don't be
yourself.
shy. Don't be shy.
um, so let's start by exploring how better data structures drive, you know, meaningful business outcomes. And Chris, we'll start with you. From your experience, can you talk through what some of the biggest challenges are that CRE teams face when they're structuring their data for decision making?
Yeah, sure. There's in sort of the long career arc that I've had, um, technology has changed a lot. And in the earlier days, I would say in the the 2000s, 2010s even, um, reporting was pretty limited. The spreadsheet was sort of the go-to medium of choice, and you were kind of mired by single source data analytics. You took your data from a single source. Let's say it's a lease schedule ladder, or perhaps it was a survey, and you made an Excel chart based on that survey. That was kind of like state of the art for a long time. And then business analytics, Power BI, Tableau comes up, and Nathan will be speaking to that in a while. But I think that set a tone. People got trapped in that mindset of going straight from single source data to the visualization of the data, and they didn't think about the greater possibilities and opportunities of what you can do with modern technology to up that game. Oh, here's the pyramid.
There we go.
It's just Derek. It just showed up. Hello, pyramid. We love pyramids and analytics, and so this is a pyramid that I discovered recently, actually, but I think it tells a really good story. It shows kind of the dependencies and some of the critical layers that are involved in modern analytics. So data systems, that's the foundational elements that Jeff will speak to. The data engineering, which is taking all those data elements, systems, integrate them together, basically creating your language. And from there, the typically the analysis process jumps over data science and it goes straight to the visualization piece. So this is a very long-winded answer to your question, Jeff, about what I typically see that's a problem is people, they just don't think about the data science layer. They go straight.
Well,
Yeah.
oh, I was just going to jump in, Chris, and say, oftentimes I see companies, clients, going right from systems and taking data out of systems and going right to visualization. So skipping even the
Okay.
engineering as well as the data science, like those two steps, I think in the pyramid are oftentimes skipped. You could just go right from system to visualization. And so you might miss opportunities to combine, restructure the data in a way that leads to unique insights.
Right. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Um, and so the data science piece is really when you can sit back and you can say, okay, here's data that I have available to me. Um, I'm no longer mired by spreadsheets. I can create a relational system that puts together things on space use, human behavior, human sentiment, and I can start thinking about questions and answering them, right? Instead of going straight to a dashboard, which is great. Dashboards are awesome, right? But there's this whole world that people are skipping, in my opinion.
And Chris, does this in part speak to the difference between reactive reporting and strategic analytics? I mean, how does a more advanced approach, unlock value?
Well, for that, I think I would want to maybe step back and talk about what the difference is between descriptive analytics and kind of the bread and butter of my practice, which I would say is prescriptive and predictive analytics. In descriptive analytics, you're basically showing what is, and there's an art to doing that, and you can tell great stories with what is. But what you don't get from descriptive analytics are answers to things like what should be, or why, or what's the end game. Like it's sort of that really important layer gets missed. So you need to come to your real estate problems with like a strategic intent. What, why do I care about utilization? Why do I care about attendance? Why do I care about how satisfied people are with the food? Those single issues are fine, but if you want to get to something deeper, like why should I care about utilization? Well, there's lots of reasons because I have a hypothesis that if my rooms are used more, then people are collaborating more. You know, is that true? Maybe, maybe not. But what's really important is to know whether or not that's actually happening. Why do I care about collaboration in the office? Why do I care about focus time in the office? Focus might be better at home, right? And so, asking those questions and answering those questions with data. I mean, it's a huge, vast universe of possibilities, and you can't do it from spreadsheets. You have to go to those deeper layers and dependencies that you just brought up, Jeff.
And as I hear you talking through this, I'm thinking about, the process of defining the problem space that you're solving for. What are the outcomes that you expect to achieve? What are the use cases? Like taking a more methodical approach to defining what it is you're solving for so that you know what the North Star is and how to get there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, Chris, maybe it'd be helpful for everybody on the call this morning if you could share some examples of a company that shifted from kind of this spreadsheet heavy type of workflow to a more advanced analytics approach and talk about maybe what the impact was.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to work with some of the largest and most sophisticated tech companies in the world, and have been sort of a beneficiary of research budgets. So companies that have really taken great care to learn
I
about
remember research
providing.
budgets. Those were the
Yeah,
days.
right. Um, that we're providing intelligence and insights about what people want and why they want it. COVID and understanding hybrid, really was, while it was a terrible thing in lots of ways, it really opened up for, as far as in my career, an incredible analytic opportunity to understand human behavior. Like I really don't think that's going to happen again. When you actually challenge people's relationship between their craft, right, and where they do that craft, it's just, I mean, it's just like an incredible opportunity. And so some clients really seized on that. And one example is a very large, top 5 tech company. And we were sitting down and talking about hybrid work and how do we understand about hybrid work and the big why of do people come into the office. And we started thinking about, what kind of data that we had at our disposal. So one of the things was badge data. A lot of companies have badge data. They had people data associated with the badge, so we knew attributes of anonymous individuals that were swiping in to the building. We knew utilization. We knew where work was getting done when it was on site. And we also knew about their behaviors, and the behaviors were taken from systems like calendar, applications usage, and all this stuff is done, with privacy fully in mind. It was totally compliant. And we thought, okay, what if we want to understand the difference between people's behavior offsite when they're at home and on-site when they're at work? Because that's a big thing, right? I mean, we want to create a workplace that supports people coming in and why they're there. Is we linked up an individual badge, person, like a single person on a single day. We knew if that person came into the office that day, and by linking that to the telemetry, we knew what they did that day. So if you swiped, we knew what you did on site that day. If you didn't swipe, we know what you did at home, what you were doing at home. And it just opened up a whole world of insights. So for example, it validated that people came in to collaborate. Like we knew that for sure because we saw it in the data. It wasn't just a hypothesis. We knew people were focusing more at home.
And
Those are
and just for the sake of the audience, sorry to interrupt the flow, Chris. There's probably a whole other conversation we could have on PII and privacy.
yes, yeah.
But when you talk about understanding behaviors at that level of detail, you understand it at a person level, or is that data de-identified?
It's all de-identified.
Okay,
Thanks for
yeah,
mentioning that. That a lot of that stuff, as you know, that was done in the data engineering phase, right? So a lot of thought. There was a whole team, created around this, and all the encryption and the relationship between real estate and HR and all that stuff took quite a while. It was not a trivial thing to do.
yeah.
And I should have mentioned that, but the while it's fully compliant, but we had this system in place so we could validate those things. We could also show the value of being on site. And to do that, we used a proxy of professional networks and found that the more you went on site, the larger your networks were and the faster they grew. And we also showed that remote employees, 100% remote employees, were at a big disadvantage to those that were going in at least 2 days a week. And that's a very powerful message as well.
So that means then if you go on site, you're more connected to company culture, your colleagues, you get
Yes,
more out of professional growth and development versus being at home full time. You're
that's right.
probably limited in those regards.
You're very limited. And so your collaborator set are your strong ties, right? It's with your team. You don't get any what we call weak ties, which is going in into the office and meeting people, the water cooler stuff, which is real. And the data validated that the water cooler stuff is real. And we also saw that the network benefits of being on site disproportionately went to new hires. So people that had been at the company for less than 2 years, which were hired during the pandemic, were receiving greater communal benefits by being on site. So just and so what that did for workplace decisions is you create environments that are disproportionately addressing the way people are working now in a hybrid world, not relying on the same thing that you had pre-COVID, which a lot of companies have done to their detriment. And when they made these changes, we were able to see pre-change and post-change whether or not there was a structural difference in the behavior. And that also tells you whether or not your project was successful. All that money that you're putting in, right? Am I getting the benefit from it? If you only focus on NSAT in a silo, badge attendance in a silo, room utilization in a silo, on Excel sheets, you're not going to get any of that. None of it. Right. And so
Yeah.
that's what I mean by that layer.
And that's probably symptomatic of a lot of the decisions that we're seeing with regard to RTO that aren't really data informed decisions. It's tends to be these kind of top down mandates to come back to the office. And there's a bit of intuition from a leadership perspective that suggests, like you were saying, that professional growth and development, connection to culture, reduction in churn, these are all outcomes associated with being in the office more frequently, but we're hard pressed to kind of prove it from a data perspective oftentimes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I should say too that you bring up the RTO debate. That's very much in absolutes. People, the way it's talked about, at least on social media, right? It's good or bad kind of a thing. Um, I just want to contextualize like when the issues that we learned with this company was true for that company. Remote work can be awesome for startups, for example, and it's a completely different problem set of issues. And the data science and the hypotheses to test for a startup would be very different than what was done for a highly mature company with a highly evolved tech stack. But data science is equally important for companies all along the maturity spectrum of data. So yeah.
Thanks for that, Chris. As I think about spreadsheets, I often think of scorecards for KPIs and metrics. And I'm curious, you guys, to get your feedback and input on the role that metrics and KPIs play today. Are we over indexed, under indexed? Is the whole kind of metrics and KPI structure too rigorous and it forces us to think more narrowly or vertically about the data sets that we're looking at and limits us from being able to combine data? What do you guys think about the role of KPIs and metrics today?
Well, I think that KPIs and metrics are still, a lot of them are still rooted in that antiquated thinking that came out of the spreadsheet era, where a lot of, which unfortunately is still state of the union, I think. And that's, I'm going to give you my attendance rate. I'm going to put it over here. This is a number on my dashboard. I'm going to give you the utilization rate. That's a number here on my dashboard. I'm going to give you my NSAT score. This is another item on my dashboard. And you're seeing them as distinct, separate units, and your brain needs to do those associations, and you're going to make stuff up, right? When that data is not linked together and you're not showing that, okay, the people that the anonymous people that respond to that survey were in that building that was being measured when the badge and utilization measurements occurred, that's a much more powerful story. And to do that, you need the data engineering, you need the platform, you need all that stuff. And the KPIs can change. You don't need to just have it be single source. You can have it, I don't know if like Jeremy Calvin talks about, cost per visit, for example. That's a great new KPI, right? So
Yeah. Cool. Let's shift gears a little bit. Now that we've kind of covered why structured data is critical, let's talk about how teams can actually use it. So, Nathan, you specialize in helping CRE teams build dashboards that turn complex data into clear insights. What are the key components of an effective business intelligence strategy for corporate real estate teams?
Yeah. So any business intelligence strategy has to start with the business first, right? You got to start with, who are the stakeholders and what do they care about? What business decisions, what business outcomes are they trying to drive? And then you kind of work up, we were just talking about metrics. You work upstream to what are some of those metrics that drive those outcomes, right? What are the leading indicators for that? And a lot of times metrics are, a numerator divided by some denominator, right? And so, and a lot of times that numerator lives in one system and the denominator lives in another system. And so if you're kind of stuck in the spreadsheet world, like I was for many years ago, basically had to pull data from all these different systems and then cobble it together in Excel, doing all kinds of VLOOKUPs and index matches and pivot tables, et cetera, right? And the problem with that is, yes, it can be done with a couple, the couple source systems. And if you have an analyst, it's going to monopolize most of their time from just, doing this Excel heavy lifting, when all of that can be automated, right? And so we started with our business outcomes. We worked backwards to what levers can drive those outcomes, which metrics are indicative of those outcomes being achieved. And then we kind of work backwards to the data. And where does this data live in various source systems? And we actually, with some of our clients, or with a lot of our clients, we use this map. We can throw it up on the screen here. And this is one I've kind of simplified it and focused it on corporate real estate workplace. But you can see on the right-hand side, you have your business stakeholders. That's where we started, right? So we have our leasing team, we have design and construction, we have occupancy planning, we have facilities, operations, food, transportation, et cetera, right? We also have our adjacent support teams like HR, people team, finance, IT. And a lot of times those folks will need access to the reporting that we provide because it's relevant to, obviously workplace is a combination of, physical space trying to drive business outcomes and support the attraction and retention of the best people, right? Because the best people do the best work, drive the best business outcomes. This is all in support of our customer, So, and the business supports the customer, support teams support the business who supports the customer. So these are our stakeholders, and we go through and we outline who are our most important stakeholders. Sometimes we have to put on blinders a little bit, right? Because you if you're not careful, you can try to boil the ocean at the beginning. But then we work backwards to say, okay, well, what sort of information does that person in leasing need to be able to do their job effectively? What sort of KPIs, metrics are relevant to their role? How are they measured, right? And we work backwards to where does that data come from? A lot of times, what the reports that we want to build have kind of already been mocked up in Excel and PowerPoint and various things over the years. And so we can use those as breadcrumbs to help us identify what should be built. But we're working our way to the left to figure out, okay, where does that, okay, square footage definitely lives in the lease admin system. Or if we don't have a lease admin system, it lives in, Chuck's filing cabinet over there. But square footage, rent, expiration dates, all this kind of stuff, rent rolls, all lives in lease admin. But then headcount, where does that come from? Okay, well, that's piping into our space management tool from Workday, from our HR information system. And then we seat those people into neighborhoods or desks in our space management tool. We've got some examples there. And you got to have floor plans and work points or polylined, floor plans, that sort of thing, to understand the space, right? So now we have kind of two different data points. And then how is that space being used? That can come from badge data, sensor data like VergeSense, OccuSpace. There's a lot of really great tools to help measure the utilization of a space, or clipboards like we used to do back in the day, Jeff, right? And so we find out where is that data being captured and maintained, and the maintained is important for later because if it's not being maintained well, or if there's an attribute that's not getting captured in a source system, the answer is not, oh, we should put it in a Google sheet, right? As so often the case.
Yeah.
And so if we start to map these things out, and you can see there's a bridge connecting our sources of information with our business stakeholders. And this bridge is what we need to build. And, this is really similar layers to what Chris described in his pyramid. But at a high level, the goal is get the data out of the source system, put it somewhere, co-locate it with all the other data from all the other source systems. And so we're going to create a data pipeline, a place to store it. And then we have to integrate that data into and create meaningful relationships. And one of the ways.
Let me jump in here really quickly,
Sure.
Nathan. So one of the focuses of our conversation today, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball. You guys jump in, let's hash it out. One of the purposes of our conversation today is kind of simplify, demystify the transition from spreadsheets to better data structures. I think it's safe to assume that workplace real estate professionals don't necessarily have, data science, data transformation, data engineering skill set. So what are we really saying in terms of what's required to move from Excel to more efficient data structure models? Like, are we saying teams need to up level their skill sets? Are we saying they need to partner more strongly with IT or other organizations that have that skill set? Like, how do we land this and make it most practical for everybody on the call today?
Yeah, it's a good question. Chris, I'll go first. What I've seen clients do is build it internally. So the corporate real estate team would either hire the skills necessary to kind of level up their analytics, which I've seen some of the top technology companies doing that. Um, that sometimes requires an advanced maturity, and sometimes companies need to develop to get to that point. The answer to your spreadsheet problem is not hire a data scientist. I've seen other clients do that, because that data scientist, you can see they're in the middle here, right? And so what data scientists end up having to do is become the data engineer, and then have to hack some report together on the other side, right? So option one is build it within the real estate workplace organization. Option two is partner with your internal IT teams. You have analytics teams, and the challenge there that we find is a lot of times those teams are really busy with core business reporting, and you get slotted in for 12, 18 months out on the roadmap, and that just keeps getting pushed out. So the alternative is so this is kind of a build versus buy decision, right? So, okay, so let's say we go with the buy decision. So we need to partner with someone externally. And there's generally two options there that I would recommend. Option one is if you want the data and the dashboards and everything living inside your environment, a consultant can come in and build all the infrastructure you need inside your walls. That's one way. That's going to be a little more expensive. It's very bespoke. Generally takes a little bit longer because it's highly customized to your environment, your needs. Second option would be go with more of a productized service as a kind of a launching point, where there's a solution that basically acts as kind of a white glove version of this bridge here in the middle of the page, where it's a black box that you don't even know really, or have to know what's happening. It feels more like software, and that team connects to all your data sources and provides you all the reporting that you need, that sort of thing. So it's more like insights as a service versus build it internally.
And if you
Uh,
go that direction, be prepared to adapt your internal business processes to fit the need of the solution. The moment you start to customize these solutions, the timeline extends, the cost increases. Like if you can adapt if you're going to buy a tool and go that direction, try looking at adapting your business processes to fit the tool out of the box. Otherwise, you might as well spend the money on outside consultants and the bespoke
mhm,
solution.
mhm.
Sorry, Chris, what were you going to say?
No, I was just gonna. Thanks for tying that up. I wanted to ask Nathan a little bit of a different question about BI reporting that Excel couldn't provide, and that's the creativity part. The art part, the ability to design information in a way for various systems that allow people to interact with the data in ways that Excel could never do. I mean, I remember when Power BI and Tableau came up, and it was like a completely different universe. And I know that a lot of clients have data scientists in-house. A lot of them don't have domain knowledge yet of workplace. And so, Nathan, I'm curious, in your experience, a lot of companies have BI talent. Maybe it's junior talent. You've been in the industry for so long. I've seen your work. It's just, it's like state of the art dashboarding. What are your Do you have any thoughts around that, around the creativity aspect, the value of having lots of experience designing?
Um, yeah. So when I first started in corporate real estate, I I was kind of also I was learning BI and I was learning real estate kind of at the same time. This is many moons ago, and thankfully I had some Sherpas to walk with me. So Jeff and I, was back when
Jeff.
we were part of the Cressa Consulting Group. And so we would partner with the various advisors, brokers, to support their clients. And it was an amazing partnership. And, people like, they would come alongside us and say, hey, here's the things that we really care about, and here's the thing that my client really cares about. And so that was super helpful for me. And so I would say if you're a aspiring BI person out there, or maybe you're amazing at BI and you want to lean into real estate, find somebody who knows this world, and can shepherd you, and show you the ropes. Because it's not rocket surgery, but it's also, there's a lot of nuance. And it's one of these onions that you just kind of keep peeling back. And, every now and then I'll hear a broker partner say something like, I'm like, I got to Google that real quick, or let me ask ChatGPT about that one. But yeah, no, I think there's definitely a lot of value in having domain expertise. And that's why these, productized solutions work so well. And yeah, I would also say that sometimes, so like, where do you go buy one of these things if you wanted to just, hey, let's just spin this up as fast as possible? A lot of times you've probably seen your broker offer you some dashboard options that they have internally. And those are generally good. I've helped build some of them and design some of them. But then, there's the question of, well, what happens if I want to change brokers? Right. And that's a real question. And you want to make sure that your data is not locked up. So not sure if I answered your question, but
Yeah, no, you did. You did.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No. Go ahead.
Since we were talking about dashboards, I wanted to ask you, Nathan, one of the pieces of feedback that I often get, or I've seen firsthand, is you build a dashboard around a specific use case. You've done all of the data engineering, the transformation, and the analytics, and you've got this dashboard that's highlighting answers to insights to a specific problem space. And then kind of usage of the dashboard wanes over time to a point sometimes that it's not even being looked at. Like, from your perspective, how do you ensure that leadership actually uses the insights provided in these dashboards?
Yeah, that is the golden question, I think, Jeff, because nobody wants to build in software. They call it shelfware, right? It's where you spend all
Yeah.
this time building this thing and it just ends up on the shelf, right? Nobody wants that. And so I think there's two main things that make that a success. One is, maybe it's kind of the obvious answer, which is it a good dashboard to begin with, right? And let me come back to that. But the second one is it embedded in the business process? Does that business user need that dashboard in order to get their job done, right? Is it truly meeting their needs? And so how do we do that? And so I have this little chart, this little another triangle. The skill set trifecta is what I call it.
It's copyright infringement, man. My lawyer's calling your lawyer right now.
Perfect. And so the angle I've taken with this trifecta is, generally when I'm talking to people who want to get into business intelligence, or people who ask me, like, why do you love this work of data visualization, reporting? And I think it's because in order to do it well, you have to have these three skill sets. There's the business acumen of, like, what should we build and why? Be able to ask good questions, engage stakeholders, talk to people, right? And figure out what should be built. Then there's the technical skill set of, can I actually build the thing And tools like Tableau and Power BI have made this so much easier than it used to be. And so the technical side is what a lot of people get wrapped up in, is of the, the hacking the tool and widgets. And I see the tool as a way of, yes, it can do a lot of different things and we can make it do what we want it to do, but it's all in service of our business stakeholder. And then some tools make the third leg of the stool easier, which is design, user experience. And so it's basically like, is it pretty? Do people actually want to use it? Does it look good? Is it engaging? Is it interactive? All those good things. And so back to the question of like, what makes a dashboard get used? What makes it good? It's really these three pillars. It's business. Is it relevant to the business user? Technical, is it accurate and trustworthy? And then design, is it user focused? Is it engaging? Is it pretty enough? Right? Does it
Well,
delight our users? Go ahead.
maybe what we should do is turn this into a square, because I think the other thing you hit on early that's really important
Mhm.
is building the dashboard into the business process. Like if you're doing occupancy planning, if you're doing facilities planning and management, there are steps in that process for planning and management of facilities operations, experience, and going to the data, going to the dashboard to check regularly as part of that process to make sure that you understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, that it's data informed is really important. And I think the utilization of these dashboards would be higher if checking the data was built into the business process too, for sure.
Definitely. Hey, we've been talking a lot about data, the use of data and visualization and analytics, but there's that foundational layer. And Jeff, I want to ask you about this because you've had so much experience dealing with big enterprise clients and building tech stacks and all that kind of stuff. In your experience, what's kind of a return on investment? How should companies be thinking about building tech stacks and all that stuff?
So so let's reframe this a little bit. I think there's a crawl, walk, run thing that needs to happen before you can start to rationalize or realize return on investment for technology tools. Like there's a number of companies that I've interacted with that really don't even have an inventory of the technology solutions that they're using, which is pretty basic. And it's complicated because sometimes real estate workplace pays for the tool and implements it through their provider or vendor. Other times the tools are paid for and implemented by IT. Sometimes they're built internally. So it's not always easy to kind of wrap your arms around the ecosystem, but it's important because in the last 10 or 15 years, we've seen the workplace, real estate, employee experience ecosystem grow exponentially. So there's typically within any one organization, there's this whole kind of ecosystem of these tools. And if you don't know what they are, you don't know the needs that they're meeting, if you don't know how much they're costing you annually, you're already at a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming you know that, assuming you have an inventory and a roadmap, understanding how the platforms support business outcomes, and usually those are twofold. There's employee experience enablement, right? Like how do you find a seat? What's in the cafe for lunch today? How do I get transportation to the office? How do I find my colleagues? And then there's like space planning and management, CMMS for facilities management. There's all these kind of operational solutions that are managing systems and operations throughout the facilities. And there's really kind of two different things. But in any case, I think it's really important to rationalize your ecosystem against these outcomes. And it comes back to understanding the problem spaces that you're solving for. What are the outcomes you're trying to achieve? And what are the use cases that kind of govern how these tools will be used? It's really the only way I've seen to successfully get to any rationalization of the spend on these tools. But I think most people would be surprised at how much organizations are now spending on these tools. I really don't think very many people know the total
Mm.
cost of all of these technology platforms. And so this is kind of a long-winded way of saying
Mhm.
it, but so apologies. But there's the employee enablement stuff that I was talking about earlier, but there's the analytics work or outcomes that we've been talking about, whether you're talking about KPIs or metrics, or even some of our clients are overbuilding these data lakes. So not only can they report on standard metrics and KPIs, but they can be really responsive, very quick to answer questions that are kind of coming out of the blue at them because they've just overbuilt these data lakes. One of the things we don't do a very good job of is rationalizing our tech stack and understanding the data that's provided in each of those solutions and how they inform the analytics work that teams are doing. So
Mhm.
it's really, in my mind, it's twofold. It's enablement. How are these solutions contributing to better, improved employee experience? And then the second is how do they line up with the kind of analytics outcomes and decision enablement of decisions,
Mhm.
if you will, on the other side.
I'm curious because I've never been part of this decision chain before, but it's from a cost perspective. Like, do some clients, when you talk about this stuff, they just see price tags and they want to keep like, well, you know, the transportation folks do their own thing and the interiors folks do their own thing, and that's the way it's been done forever, and I don't want to pay more. Like, is there, and everybody's so fixated on costs now, right? Like, what are,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think, Chris, the answer is, the companies that are sophisticated enough to understand impact on employees relative to the cost of technologies that reduce friction and make them more productive. It's a no-brainer. There is a
Mhm.
relationship between not just the tech stack and employee outcomes, a whole host of other things as well, but you can think about technology enablement and the experience that it affords employees in terms of having impact on how productive do they feel, what's happening with the level of churn, like have you earned the commute, are people actually coming to the office? There's ways to measure this to understand the value that you're getting from your tools. And look, you don't have to be super detailed about it, but you have to get some signal to really kind of give you an indication of whether or not the spend is lining up with the outcome. Is your churn still super high, people aren't coming to the office? Then you may want to think differently about some of the tools, or at least ask questions about the tools and whether or not they're meeting the needs of your people.
Mhm.
Jeff, if we back up just a second, kind of zoom out, we've been talking for a while. For someone who's listening to this, who's maybe just getting started, what would you say is the first step towards helping them get a kind of create a more integrated technology stack in real estate workplace?
Yeah, create an inventory. You can't start if you don't
Okay.
know what you've got, and then start to think about a roadmap. And the roadmap is not just how technology evolves when you're sunsetting tools and you're bringing on new tools. It's understanding what the problems are that you're solving for, outcomes, use cases. If you put in the time and effort to do the inventory, to build a roadmap that's based on problem spaces that need to be solved for within the enterprise, you will be 1,000 times more successful than if you're just wildly swinging, right?
It's actually the same advice in my world too. Like, y- it's sitting back and thinking about the why and what do I have available to me? Looking at the full data ecosystem and doing that thinking up front, asking the questions up front. That really is what determines everything. And I don't, at least in my purview, it's very rare when you can get the right people together and have a mediated discussion around those things, and to have it often, right? Because it's never like one, you just don't put a stake in the ground and say, this is what I need and this is what I'm, it's kind of an evolving thing, right? With technology and AI and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, doing that inventory and the use case development is exactly the same kind of thing from a data science perspective.
I hope everybody's enjoying this conversation. I'm loving it. I'm not sure what that says about me. But we've covered a tremendous amount of ground. Why don't we open it up to Q&A and see if there are any questions from the audience that we can address.
Yes, we actually do have a really big one.
Matt.
Two-parted.
Hey, Matt. Matt is one of the greatest clients of all time. A very smart guy.
Awesome. So do the real estate analytics product solutions you're describing provide the ability to investigate forward-looking questions and scenarios, or are they providing better now insights as to what is going on in the workspace? Sorry.
Yeah, generally what I've seen, most of the productized stuff, it's trying to solve for 80% of the questions, and it's generally descriptive. Gonna tell me the news, like where are we at today, and how do we get there, looking backwards, with some level of exploration and digging into, well, why did that happen? Rarely, although there are some new modern tools coming out now, like Trebilar, that is designed to be a little bit more. It's layering in the AI and the machine learning and some of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, you have more familiarity with that tool, but
Yeah, I mean, Matt, I wish I had something better to tell you, but I think we're still kind of in the descriptive phase of these tools. Like they're all trying to go predictive. But going back to the first pyramid, that's really where data science kicks in, and it's looking at your current state data, your historical data, and using data science to apply predictive analytics to those data sets and try to forecast what's going on. But I'm just not seeing a lot of tools out there that do predictive at all, and the few that are trying to do it, they're just nascent. It'll get better because the demand for predictive analytics is high. So tools will get better. More tools will include predictive analytics, but we're just not there today.
Well, I'm gonna, just this is a plug for, data scientists out there. Our use, right, is that we can build solutions specific to client needs, that address their issues. And, Matt, I know that Matt's very interested in workplace of the future, right? And so right now we do a great job at describing what is, what is the performance of workplace today, like all those examples I was talking about. But how do we get ahead of what the workplace should be like in 5 or 10 years, right? We know that there's a lot of data on people who aren't in the workforce yet. And can we be using that information to predict what's going to happen? For example, in the healthcare space, right? They know with certainty how many births there are going to be in 5 years from now, with certainty. And so they think ahead, right? And they create their clinics and their facilities ahead. I know we're running down now, but Gen Z and whoever's before Gen Z, I can't think, but they're going to want to know all kinds of different things. And data scientists can definitely help extract, some of what those needs are and project them forward, because data scientists know the relationship between people and space. And if you know the needs of young folks, right, that can help propel things forward.
yeah,
There's a second question that Matt has on
Yeah.
privacy, but I don't think we have time to get to that.
Chris, the other thing I would layer onto what you said is there's kind of this concept of evergreen reporting, like, and that's where dashboards do really well. It's like, here's the report I need to see every day, every week, every month. And then there's kind of one-time decision support. And I think that's where data scientists really shine. And that's the hardest thing to productize, right? And so then you say, oh, well, AI is going to replace all the data scientists. No, AI is just going to make the data scientist's job a little easier, make them more effective at doing
That's
the
true.
job.
That's true. It's already happening now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I use it all the time.
All right. Well, like I said, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground. Maybe what we can do, guys, together is
Should we sing?
summarize. Yeah, just kind of summarize
Final countdown.
what summarize what the key takeaways are from the conversation today. For me, I kind of go back to basics, and I think using a product methodology and mentality to when you're thinking about analytics, when you're thinking about data science, visualization, technology platforms, to me, it really comes down to understanding the problems that you're solving for, what you're trying to achieve by solving those problems, defining use cases, understanding impact so that you can prioritize um, investment and or analytics resources. I think for me, that's one of the key kind of things to keep in mind is put in the time to really um, define the problem spaces that you're solving for, because ultimately it will provide context and direction, not only for the teams that are doing the work, but also how you communicate with leaders in the organization as well. What did you guys take away from the conversation? What would you add in?
Yeah, one thing that the promise here was that we would help you think about how to move beyond spreadsheets and into a more um, impactful analytics program for real estate and workplace. And I think one of the things that came through in all three of our sections was thinking about creating a map, right? An inventory. We actually have a tool that we created. And so let's see here. Let me just throw it back up here. So this tool, we actually have a version of it that's filled out. It looks like this. And we also have a blank version. And if you guys want to download it, play with it, get started with it, all you have to do is go to allegroanalytics.com/map and get your own copy. But yeah, I think having a map like that where you can start to identify who are our stakeholders, what are our data sources, what are the business outcomes we're trying to drive, and then how do we create metrics reporting, advanced analytics, and the whole
So,
stack. Go ahead.
so Nathan, really quickly, are we sending a follow-up message with a link? I can't remember what we agreed on, or just use this link to get there.
Yeah. So if you use this link, it's basically asking you, hey, can you subscribe to the Allegro Insiders newsletter? And you put in your email address, and it'll take you in the next page. You can basically just download the map. And then also we can follow up to everyone who subscribes. We'll follow up with the recording for this webinar, the slides and all that good stuff.
All right.
And
I'm
then
a stickler. I'm a stickler for starting and stopping on time. What
yeah.
you've got like 30 seconds, Nathan.
Oh, I was
Make
just
it
gonna
count,
say
buddy.
this is not the last one of these, right?
That's right.
So Jeff the stickler will be back, and he's bringing friends, and we're gonna do more of these type of things, and we'd love to inform you about him. And so that's another reason to join the subscription there. So
Guys, it was
Yeah.
so much fun chatting with you both. Always love it. And thanks to everybody that attended today. Really appreciate you taking the time. Cheers,
thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.